Liam Holt had never asked anyone for anything. He opened his garage with two bare hands, raised his daughter alone for 3 years after his wife died, and never once complained. But on that October morning, when Evelyn Marsh, CEO of Marsh Automotive Group, signed the order to shut down his garage with a single stroke of her pen, everything Liam had built collapsed in front of the 8-year-old girl standing in the doorway, clutching her stuffed bear tight and trying to make sense of the world. Nobody in that room understood what was really walking out the door. They shut down his garage. He built an empire. This is Liam Holt's story, and it begins with a notebook. The fluorescent lights above Holt Auto hummed at a frequency only mechanics seemed to love. It was not yet 7 in the morning, and the garage at the edge of Millhaven, Ohio, already smelled of motor oil and cold metal, and the particular kind of quiet that belongs to people who start work before the rest of the world has opened its eyes. Liam Holt lay flat on a creeper beneath a 1993 Ford F-150, turning a half-inch socket wrench the way some men turn the pages of a book slowly, deliberately, with full attention. His hands knew what they were doing. They always had. Kara sat on a high stool near the front counter, a notebook of her own balanced on her knees, a pencil working steadily through a page of long division. She was 8 years old and serious about it. Under her left arm, wedged between her elbow and her ribs, was a stuffed bear named Bolt, worn soft with use, one glass eye slightly off-center, but held the way children hold things that belong to them completely. Her mother had given her Bolt 18 months before she died. Kara had not slept a single night without him since. 3 questions, Liam said from under the truck. It was their morning ritual, started the week after the funeral, when Kara had gone quiet in a way that frightened him. Every morning, 3 things she was curious about. It had been Claire's idea, taken from a notebook Claire kept during her own childhood, and Liam had picked it up the way he picked up everything Claire left behind carefully, with both hands. Kara thought for a moment, tapping the eraser against her chin. Why don't electric cars make noise? Why do brake pads wear down on the inside faster? And why is the sky not the same blue every day? Liam slid out from under the truck on the creeper, face tilted up at the ceiling, turning his answer over before he spoke. He gave her all 3. The one about the sky took longest, because it was the best question. Kara listened and wrote something in her notebook. She was her mother's daughter in ways that sometimes stopped Liam cold in the middle of a sentence. The garage was not large. It held 3 bays comfortably, 4 if you were willing to squeeze. The tools hung on pegboard outlines traced in black marker, so every wrench went back to exactly where it lived. There was a coffee maker on a shelf above the parts bin, and a hand-lettered sign over the register that said, "Labor rates are fair, or they're not labor." 6 years of showing up on time, charging what the job was worth, and remembering the names of people's dogs, had built something that wasn't in any accounting ledger, a reputation that ran ahead of him, like light. On the wall beside the door to the back office, taped at eye level with a single piece of masking tape, was a small piece of notepaper. The handwriting on it was a woman's careful, slightly tilted, ink gone faintly brown at the edges. It said, "Don't ever stop thinking." See, Liam looked at it every morning before he started. He had looked at it every morning for 3 years, and he did not intend to stop. The announcement came on a Tuesday, buried in the business section of the Columbus Dispatch, and reposted on the Millhaven Town Council's public notice board. Marsh Automotive Group, the 3rd largest automotive service conglomerate in the country, had selected Millhaven as the site for a new Marsh Premier Service Hub. 60,000 square feet of high bay service capacity, an attached dealership showroom, and a customer experience center. Construction was projected to begin the following spring. The chosen block ran along Route 41, the same stretch of road where Holt Auto and 4 neighboring small businesses had operated, most of them for a decade or more. Jackson Reed arrived in Millhaven on a Thursday morning in a charcoal-colored sedan that looked like it had been rented specifically to be unremarkable. He was 39, with the kind of face that looked honest right up until the moment it needed not to. He wore gray suits with exceptional lapels and carried a portfolio case that never opened in front of anyone he was negotiating against. He met with the bakery owner first, then the framing shop, then the 2 businesses on the east end of the block. He was courteous, thorough, and generous in a way that left no room for argument. Within 11 days, 4 of the 5 property leases had been quietly reassigned. He came to see Liam on a Friday afternoon, when Kara was at school and the garage was between appointments. He introduced himself with the measured warmth of a man who had made this introduction many times before, opened the portfolio case just once, just enough, and showed Liam the number on the page. It was more than twice the assessed value of the business. Liam looked at it for a few seconds. Then he looked up. "I appreciate you coming out," he said, "but this garage isn't an asset I'm moving. It's where I am every morning when my daughter gets dropped off, and every afternoon when she gets picked up. That's not something I'm selling." Jackson nodded slowly, the way people nod when they're filing an answer away, rather than accepting it. He thanked Liam for his time, shook hands warmly, and left without showing anything in his expression except professional cordiality. His eyes, however, had already moved on to the next step. That evening, Jackson made a video call from his hotel room. Evelyn Marsh sat at a desk in Columbus, a glass of water near her left hand, her face composed in the particular stillness of someone accustomed to receiving reports. Jackson gave her the summary in 2 minutes. Evelyn listened without interrupting. When he finished, she said one word: "Expedite." Then the call ended. What Evelyn had on her desk, and what she looked at after the screen went dark, was a single page from a competitive intelligence file. One of Jackson's associates had brought a vehicle in for service that week, walked quietly through the back of the garage while waiting, and photographed what was on the work table. The page contained a summary of technical schematics hand-drawn, densely annotated, depicting something that looked, to the senior engineer who reviewed the photographs, like an electric drivetrain torque distribution system with efficiency parameters that should not have been possible from a garage in rural Ohio. Evelyn had underlined one sentence at the bottom: "Source unknown, credentials unknown." She picked up her pen and wrote 2 words beneath it: "Move faster." The 3 weeks that followed were a lesson in how power operates when it does not need to announce itself. Nothing happened loudly. Nothing happened in a way that left fingerprints. In the first week, the automotive parts distributor that Liam had used for 6 years, the one whose driver knew Kara by name, sent a letter informing Holt Auto that they were restructuring their client qualifications and could no longer service accounts below a new minimum annual volume threshold. The threshold was set at a number Holt Auto had never come close to reaching and never would. The alternative distributor Liam found charged 15% more and delivered on a 3-day lag instead of same day. 3 jobs backed up. 2 regular customers, men who had trusted Liam with their trucks since the beginning, called to apologize and took their vehicles elsewhere. In the second week, an inspector from the city building department appeared at the garage door on a Wednesday morning with a clipboard and a camera. He found 2 code violations in the used oil storage area technical infractions involving secondary containment specifications that had not been flagged in 6 years of operation. The violations carried a modest fine and a mandatory remediation order. Corrections required within 15 days, or the facility would be subject to temporary closure. The corrections, done properly and up to current code, would cost Liam approximately $11,000 he did not have liquid. In the third week, the commercial insurance carrier sent a certified letter stating the policy would not be renewed at the end of the current term, citing elevated site risk designation. Without commercial insurance, Liam could not legally operate. The letter was dated 9 days before expiration. Sam Burke sat with Liam at the workbench on a Thursday night after Kara was asleep. They had spread the 3 letters out flat between them, along with Liam's account statements and a yellow legal pad. Sam was not a man who softened things unnecessarily. He looked at the paper and then at his friend. "They're choking you through the system," he said. "Nothing they've done breaks a law. They're just making it impossible to breathe until you stop." Liam did not answer for a long moment. He reached across the bench and picked up the blue technical notebook, the one he kept in the same drawer as his wrenches, the one no customer had ever been allowed to touch. He turned it over in his hands once, then set it back down. His face was quiet in the way faces get when a decision has already been made, and what remains is only the execution. The last day of Holt Auto fell on a Monday, in mid-October. Liam had loaded most of the tools into the truck the night before. Working by the light of a single work, he had unhooked the pegboard from the wall and rolled it against the truck bed. He had taken down the sign. Sam came at 8 in the morning, and they worked through the morning in a quiet that needed no words. The garage stripped down slowly, the empty bays growing louder with each piece removed, the way a room always sounds bigger after it has been cleared. Kara was at school. Liam had timed it so she would not see this part. At 11, 3 black vehicles pulled to a stop in front of the building. Evelyn Marsh stepped out of the second car. She was 53 years old and carried herself the way certain kinds of authority carries itself. Not with arrogance exactly, but with the absolute assumption of space. She wore a navy blazer over a gray blouse, her hair pulled back cleanly, her eyes moving across the facade of the garage, the way an architect's eyes move across a building. She is already redesigning in her mind. Jackson Reed fell into step 2 paces behind her. Behind him came a team of 4-2 architects, a site engineer, and a project manager, all carrying rolled documents and measuring equipment. Evelyn walked into the garage without pausing at the door. She looked around once. Then she turned to Jackson and said, at normal conversational volume, entirely without malice, smaller than I expected. She said it the way people say things that are simply true. Liam was at the back wall, unscrewing the last set of shelf brackets. He heard her. He continued what he was doing. Evelyn noticed him, recognized him from the photograph, and approached. When she spoke, her tone was measured and not unkind, which in some ways made it worse. Mr. Holt, I know this isn't an easy transition. You were offered fair compensation, more than fair. These changes are difficult, but they're part of moving forward. Liam set down his screwdriver. He turned and looked at her. He said nothing. His silence was the most complete thing in the room. Then the bell above the door chimed. Kara walked in. She had been released from school 2 hours early for a staff planning day, something that had slipped through in the chaos of the week. She stood in the threshold with her backpack on and Bolt under her arm, looking at the half-stripped walls, the empty bays, the strangers with their rolled plans and measuring tapes standing in the place she knew better than anywhere except her own bedroom. She found her father's face. Dad, she said quietly. Did they take it already? Liam crossed the room in 4 strides. He knelt in front of her, his big hands on her small shoulders, and looked at her directly. Evelyn watched. She did not move. She did not speak. Something crossed her face, brief and controlled, and then she turned away toward the site engineer, who was asking about drainage. Liam's voice, when he spoke to Kara, was low and steady, in a way that cost him something. Nobody took anything from us, sweetheart. We're just getting ready to build something bigger. Kara looked at him with the seriousness of a child who was not entirely convinced, but trusted the person speaking too much to say so. She looked at Bolt, then she nodded. As they walked out together, Liam's hand on Kara's shoulder, he did not look back. But in the last second, before the door swung shut, his hand moved to the inside pocket of his jacket, a reflex, a confirmation. The blue notebook was there. He had put it in that pocket first, before anything else. The night before. It had stayed there all day, close to his ribs, like a second heartbeat. 3 days after the garage closed, Liam sat alone at Sam's kitchen table at 2 in the morning with a cold cup of coffee and the blue notebook open in front of him. Kara was asleep in the spare room, one arm around Bolt, the nightlight on. The house was quiet except for the refrigerator and the sound of his pencil moving slowly across paper. He thought about Claire. She had been a mechanical engineer at a mid-size components firm before the illness came. In the last 2 years, when she could no longer go into the office reliably, Liam had sat beside her at the dining room table and worked through her technical problems with her, the two of them building and revising together, while Kara played on the floor nearby. He had solved 3 problems Claire's colleagues had spent months on. He had not thought of it as remarkable at the time. It was just the kind of thinking he did. After she died, sorting through her files, he found 3 journal papers submitted under her name to peer-reviewed engineering publications. At the bottom of each, in the acknowledgments in a font 2 sizes smaller than the text, was a single line, Technical Development in collaboration with L. Holt. She had put him there without telling him. He had sat on the floor of her office and held those 3 pages for a very long time. The blue notebook had started as a place to put the thinking he could no longer share with her, over 3 years of mornings and evenings in the garage, it had become something else, entirely, a detailed architecture for an electric drivetrain torque distribution system that managed variable power delivery between axle sets, in a way that reduced energy loss at the point of transfer, far beyond what current industry methods achieved. The next morning, Sam set a piece of paper on the table beside Liam's cup. It was a printed public notice, a tax lien property auction scheduled for Thursday. The listing near the top was for the Kellner & Sons Precision Manufacturing Facility on the east end of Millhaven. 3,800 square feet, 2 floors, industrial-rated electrical systems, heavy equipment present but non-operational, available for minimum bid due to outstanding municipal tax debt. The number at the bottom was $82,000. Sam said, "You don't have the money." He said it without judgment, because it was true, and he was not the kind of man who pretended otherwise. Liam looked at the page for a long time. Then he reached for the notebook and opened it to the last written page, a dense diagram of numbered subassemblies arranged across 3 columns. He closed it again. "I have something worth more than money," he said. He was talking about the compensation check from Marsh Automotive Group, still undeposited, sitting in the inside pocket of the same jacket where the notebook lived. He had not wanted to open it, but it existed, and now it had a use. He bid on the Kellner building Thursday morning and won it without competition. Nobody else had placed a bid. The building had sat in municipal limbo for 11 years. He paid the full amount that afternoon, shook hands with a clerk who looked mildly surprised, and drove to the east end of Millhaven with Sam to see what he had bought. The factory doors were padlocked, with chains gone orange at the links. Inside, after Sam cut them, the space opened upward 12 feet to a vaulted metal ceiling crossed by beamwork and skylights thick with grime. Rows of CNC lathes and hydraulic press equipment stood under canvas tarps in the half-dark, machine after machine, in postures of long waiting. The air held the cold smell of metal and time. Liam walked the full length of the floor without speaking. At the far end he stopped, looked back at the length of it, the dimensions, the ceiling height, the loading dock on the south wall, and then he looked down at the notebook in his hand. Sam watched him. Neither of them said anything. The following weekend, Kara came to see it. She stood in the center of the main floor and looked up at the ceiling, then all the way around. "What are you going to make here?" Liam crouched down to her level, the way he always did when the answer mattered. "Something people don't think I can make," he said. Kara turned to Bolt, set him on a dusty work table with great deliberateness, and said, "We're staying to help Dad." The bear's one good eye regarded the factory without opinion. What followed was not effortless or cinematic. It was 18 months of early mornings and nights that lasted past midnight, of problems that had to be solved the hard way, because the easy ways were all unavailable. Liam and Sam spent the first 3 months repairing the Kellner equipment by hand. 6 of the 12 CNC lathes were salvageable. The hydraulic press systems needed new seals, and recalibrated control boards, work that a service company quoted at $30,000 and that Liam did himself over 4 weeks, consulting second-hand manuals and diagrams he drew from memory. The electrical system required a licensed contractor, the one cost he could not shortcut, and it came in at $19,000, which left him operating on a margin that permitted no mistakes and no waste. In the 4th month, he filed his first patent application. The attorney who reviewed the technical documentation called him 3 days after the filing to ask a question. The call lasted 40 minutes. At the end of it, the attorney said, with the careful economy of someone not given to overstatement, "Mr. Holt, I want to make sure we're protecting this correctly. What you've described is not an incremental improvement. This is a foundational architecture." Liam said he understood. The attorney asked where he had studied. Liam told him he hadn't, not formally, not for this. The attorney paused for 4 seconds and said they should schedule a second call. By the 8th month, Holt Precision Works had its first 3 customers: a specialty electric vehicle conversion shop in Pittsburgh, a performance parts builder in Tennessee, and an independent drivetrain fabricator in Michigan who sent a test order on a Thursday and called back Monday morning to say the components had exceeded every tolerance specification by a margin he wanted to discuss in detail. Word moved through the industry. The way it always moves when something is genuinely better, not through advertising but through the conversations engineers have. Nothing else. Kara spent her afternoons after school at the factory. Liam had built a small office from salvaged partition panels in the northeast corner, with a desk and a proper chair and a lamp. She did her homework there, asked questions whenever she had them, and had memorized the names of most of the machines by month 10. The 3 questions ritual migrated from the garage to the factory floor, from mornings to late afternoons, and the questions grew harder in the way they do when the person asking them has been paying close attention. In month 13, a senior engineer from Nexion Motors, a mid-size electric vehicle manufacturer running a development program that competed directly with several Marsh automotive initiatives, received a sample drivetrain component through a secondary distribution channel. He tested it against his own team's current specifications and then tested it again because the first result seemed unlikely. He called the number on the invoice. Liam answered on the second ring. 3 weeks later, Nexion sent a formal proposal for a full integration trial. They wanted to build Liam's torque distribution system into a mid-range production platform currently in late-stage development. The trial succeeded. It was not close. By month 18, Holt Precision Works employed 17 people, held 3 issued patents and 2 pending, and had active licensing agreements with Nexion Motors and 2 European manufacturers, 1 German, 1 Swedish. Sam Burke held a title he had not asked for, Chief Operating Officer. He discovered this when Liam put a nameplate on his office door. He stood in the hallway and looked at it for a while before he said anything. What he finally said was, "You could have mentioned it." Liam was already back at his workbench. "I just did," he said. In Columbus, inside the Marsh Automotive Group headquarters building, the Engineering Development Department held an internal review that should have been ordinary. The item on the agenda labeled New Competitor Technology Assessment turned out to be neither ordinary nor brief. The Director of Engineering Technology walked his team through performance data that Nexion Motors had not announced publicly, but that had moved through industry channels faster than anyone intended. The efficiency figure at the center of the data was a 19% improvement in energy transfer at the axle-to-axle interface under variable load conditions. Marsh's own team had been trying to reach that number for 4 years. They had not reached it. Evelyn Marsh sat at the head of the table and listened to the full presentation without interrupting. When it ended, she asked 2 questions. The first, whose technology? The second, where? Jackson Reed slid a folder across the table. It contained a patent filing summary, a business registration document, and a satellite image of the Kellner and Sons building on the east side of Millhaven, Ohio. The name on the patent was Liam Holt. The company name was Holt Precision Works. Evelyn looked at the satellite image for a moment. Then she looked at the patent. She remembered the garage, the half-empty bays, the man who continued working without turning around while she walked through his space without asking. She remembered the child in the doorway. Jackson presented 2 options. The first was acquisition, purchase the patent portfolio outright at fair market value, which by current estimation was substantial. The second was litigation, challenge the patent on prior art grounds, using internal Marsh engineering documentation. He laid both out in the precise, neutral tone he used for all recommendations, waiting for her to choose. Evelyn was quiet for a moment that went slightly longer than the room expected. Then she said, "Neither. I'll meet with him directly." Jackson started to say something about preferred channels for negotiation of this type. Evelyn looked at him once. Jackson stopped. "Millhaven," she said. "Arrange it." Liam received the request through his attorney, a formal letter from Marsh Automotive Group's legal office, proposing a meeting to discuss licensing and acquisition options. His attorney thought he should let the legal office handle it. Sam, reading the letter over Liam's shoulder, said, "Your call." Liam read it twice. Then he said, "Tell them I'll meet, but it's here." The Marsh representatives pushed back a neutral venue in Columbus, a downtown hotel. Liam's attorney communicated his position. The meeting would take place at Holt Precision Works at 2 in the afternoon on the proposed date, or it would not take place at Liam's initiative. Evelyn Marsh agreed to the terms without further negotiation. That evening, Kara found her father standing at the window of the small office, looking out at the production floor below 8 workers at their stations. Machines running, the light overhead clean and white. She stood beside him and looked at the same thing. "What are you thinking?" she asked. Liam put his hand on the top of her head. "Thinking about your mom," he said. After a moment, Kara said, very practically, "She would have liked the lathes." Liam laughed, a small, real laugh that came from somewhere he didn't often open. "Yeah," he said, "she would have." The morning of the meeting, Liam put on a clean shirt and a work jacket and made no other concession to ceremony. Sam arrived early and stood near the office door, arms folded, waiting. 2 of the workers who knew the backstory found reasons to be closer to the center of the building than their stations required. Evelyn Marsh arrived on time. She came in a single vehicle with Jackson and 1 legal advisor. She stepped out and walked toward the entrance, and whatever she had expected to see, she paused genuinely, not performatively, to look at what the building had become. The production floor was running. The machines were clean and calibrated. The layout was logical and precise. The walls above the workstations held printed technical diagrams in clear frames. It was not a large operation, but it was not small in any of the ways that mattered. Liam met her at the office door. He did not extend his hand first. He waited. She extended hers. They shook. The meeting began. Evelyn set out the proposal with characteristic efficiency. Marsh Automotive Group was prepared to make a significant offer for full acquisition of the Holt Precision Works patent portfolio, exclusive rights, full ownership, with a manufacturing carve-out, allowing Holt Precision to continue as a contract producer during a transitional period. She named a number. It was a number that most people in a room that size would never hear attached to something they had made themselves. Liam listened to all of it. He sat with his hands flat on the table, the blue notebook closed in front of him but visible. When she finished, he was quiet for a few seconds. Then he said, "Do you remember the day you came to my garage?" Evelyn said yes. "You said it was smaller than you expected." She did not deny it. Liam stood and walked to the window. Below, the floor hummed with work. "The notebook I had that day wasn't a shop notebook. I think someone in your organization knew that, and I think it's part of why the timeline on my property moved as fast as it did." He let that sit for a moment. Jackson Reed adjusted his position in his chair. "I'm not here to argue about what happened, but I want you to understand what was in that notebook and what it became, because it matters to what I'm going to say next." He turned back. "I'm not selling the patents. Not to Marsh, not to anyone." He paused. "What I've structured instead are non-exclusive licensing agreements open to any qualified manufacturer at market rate. That includes Marsh Automotive Group. You can have access to the same technology as everyone else. What you cannot have is a lock on it. Nobody gets a lock on it. That's not how I built this, and it's not how I intend to operate it." The room was quiet. Jackson looked at his notes. The legal advisor looked at the ceiling. Liam sat back down. His voice, when he continued, was not hard, and it was not soft. It was simply level, the way a surface is level accurate and without apology. "You shut my garage down to protect your market position. I understand that. It was a business decision. But losing the garage was also what gave me the time I needed to finish what was in that notebook. I would not have gotten here on the same timeline if I'd still been open." He paused once more. "So in a way, I should thank you." Evelyn Marsh looked at him for a long moment. The quality of her attention had shifted from the attention she had brought to the garage in October. Shifted in a way that was hard to name, but unmistakable. She had come to Millhaven expecting a negotiation. What she was sitting across from was something that did not require her agreement to exist. She stood, and then she extended her hand again, not as a formality this time, but as a different kind of acknowledgement. "Holt Precision Works should be at the Industry Technology Summit in October," she said. "I chair the organizing committee. The technical exhibition needs work that looks like yours." She said it without embellishment, without the overlay of strategy. It was the closest she was capable of coming to an apology, and it was real. Liam took her hand. "I'll think about it," he said. As the Marsh vehicles pulled out of the lot, Sam let out a long breath and sat down in the nearest chair. He looked at the ceiling, then at Liam. "Where did you learn to do that?" Liam picked up the blue notebook and turned it over once in his hands. Claire always said the best endings are the ones where both people can still stand up straight when it's over, he said. He set the notebook down and went back to the floor. The exhibition hall in Columbus was not built for quiet. It ran on the noise of 500 simultaneous conversations, the rolling of equipment carts, the electronic chirp of badge scanners, and the particular energy of an industry watching itself transform in real time. Holt Precision Works had a corner booth in Hall C, not large, not decorated with backlit signage. 3 physical drivetrain models on a plain white table, clean technical documentation in a binder, and a printed architectural diagram of the torque distribution system mounted on a single foam panel. It was everything and nothing extra. Sam had spent 2 days getting it right. He had opinions about the placement of the models and expressed them at length. Kara helped with the final arrangement, moving things 2 inches to the left with the authority of someone who had thought about it longer than Sam had. Bolt was in her backpack. Liam spent the morning explaining the technology to anyone who stopped long enough to want to understand it. Several did not stop long enough. Several stopped for 20 minutes and left with a card and a kind of stunned quiet on their faces. By early afternoon, 3 companies had asked to be added to the licensing inquiry list. Evelyn Marsh came to the booth at 3:15. She came without Jackson, without her legal team. She wore a coat rather than a blazer, and she moved through the hall the way a person moves when they are not performing. She stopped at the table and looked at the models for a moment before she spoke. She asked a technical question, a real one, specific to the second model, about load distribution behavior at low speed. Liam answered it. She followed up with precision. He answered that too. They stood on either side of the table like 2 engineers who had always been capable of this conversation. Kara was at the far end of the table when Evelyn arrived. She had been explaining the first model to a man in his 60s who had been genuinely interested and slightly bewildered. When the man moved on, Kara turned and found Evelyn standing a few feet away, watching her. She recognized the face the way children sometimes recognize faces they have seen in difficult moments, with a clarity that doesn't get clouded by what surrounded the memory. She did not show what she recognized. She simply looked. Evelyn crouched down to her level. "Can you explain this to me?" she asked, gesturing to the model. Kara looked at her for 1 second, then turned to the model and began. She used the right words. She kept them in the right order. She drew the shapes in the air with her hands the way Liam had when he explained things to her, and she stopped when she needed to make sure she was being followed, and started again when she was. When she finished, she looked up and waited. Evelyn said quietly, "Did your dad teach you all of this?" Kara thought for a moment. "Dad and my mom. Mom's gone now. But Dad tells me the things she taught him, so I still get both." Liam was standing 6 feet away. He had heard the last 2 sentences. He let them sit. Evelyn stood. She turned to look at him, and the distance between the person she had been in that garage 14 months earlier and the person standing in this exhibition hall was visible in the way she carried herself, not as guilt, not as performance, but as something that had been quietly settled. "I owe you an apology," she said, "not for the business decision, but for how I stood in your garage, for what I said." She said it directly, without preamble, and did not elaborate. Liam looked at her. He nodded once, a single, complete acknowledgement. He did not return it with reassurance or warmth he didn't have. He simply received it and let it count. Kara, who had been watching both of them with the concentrated attention she brought to things she couldn't fully name, turned back to the model on the table. "Do you want to hear about the second part?" she asked. Evelyn looked at her. Something crossed her face that had not been there before. Something unguarded and brief and entirely real. "Yes," she said. "I do." She pulled a chair from the neighboring booth and sat down, and Kara began again from the beginning of the second section, patient and precise and completely in command. 6 months after the exhibition, the upper floor of the Kellner building was opened and rebuilt. The work took 3 months. When it was done, it held 12 dedicated research workstations, a prototype fabrication area, an environmental testing enclosure, and a small library wall stocked with technical journals organized by subject. Liam called it the development floor. The sign on the door said R and D. Kara immediately said it needed something better. They had not yet agreed on what. On the first morning, the floor was ready before any of the workstations had been populated, before the chairs arrived, when the space was still echoing and new Liam walked in alone. He stood in the center of the empty room, the way he had stood in the center of the main floor on the first day he owned the building. Looking at what had not yet been built, he was holding the blue notebook. It was thinner than it had once been. A third of the pages had been removed and converted to formal technical documentation over the preceding 18 months, drawn into engineering blueprints and patent submissions and manufacturing specifications. What remained was the part still in progress. He walked to the window on the east wall and looked out at the yard below the loading dock extension, the additional parking, the small garden Kara had started in the strip beside the south wall, 3 rose bushes, and something green she had not yet identified, planted with a library book about soil conditions and updated with daily progress reports, whether Liam asked for them or not. He heard her on the stairs before she appeared in the doorway. She was carrying her backpack and Bolt was under her arm, and she stopped at the door and looked at the empty room with the evaluating eye she had developed for empty spaces in this building. She came in and stood beside him at the window. 3 questions? She said. It was an afternoon, not a morning, but the timing had never been the rigid part of it. Go ahead, he said. She thought, why does torque distribution matter more at low speed than high speed? Why did you keep the notebook when you could have had it digitized? And she paused, looking down at the yard. Why do you always stand at windows when you're thinking? He answered the first 2 in full. For the third, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I don't know. Maybe because you can see everything and nothing can ask you anything back. Kara considered this with the seriousness she applied to answers she thought might be important. She wrote something in the small notebook she had started carrying in the front pocket of her backpack, a narrow thing with a green cover, filled with her careful handwriting. Liam looked around the empty room one more time. Then he reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and took out a small folded piece of notepaper, the one from the garage wall, the one with Claire's handwriting, the one he had carried in his wallet for 2 years since the day he'd taken it down. He smoothed it flat with 2 fingers, walked to the wall beside the east window, and pressed it against the surface. It held. He stepped back. Don't ever stop thinking. See. He looked at it for a moment. Kara came and stood beside him and read it the way she always read things that had belonged to her mother, carefully, with her whole attention. Then she nodded, very slightly, the way she nodded when something was exactly right. They sat down together on the floor of the empty room, no chairs yet, the concrete still bare, and Liam opened the notebook to the next blank page and began to draw. Kara opened her backpack and took out her homework and a pencil case with an elastic on it. Bolt sat on the windowsill with his one good eye aimed at the yard below. The rose bushes, the long light of late afternoon falling across the building, Liam Holt had bought for $82,000 and turned into the first floor of everything that came next. From the production level below, the sound of the machines rose steady and familiar, the particular rhythm of work that knows what it is doing and does not need to announce it. The afternoon held. The notebook filled 1 line at a time. And in the corner of the windowsill, between the bare and the last of the light, Claire's note stayed exactly where it had always been.